Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection to Catajuda. Catajuda is this beautiful rock formation in Central Australia, which is also the sacred masculine side, and very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine side. And it's these energies that are coming through now to unite us in love and harmony and balance in our beautiful New Earth energies. What I'm here to do is to give a platform to our men to speak man to man from the heart about their journey, their experience, their wisdom, their insights, their tools, their practices. What have they learned along their own journey that they can now share with other men walking this path? And of course, us women that want to get a deeper understanding into and insights into our men and the masculine journey. Today's guest is a man called Jamie Ray, and he is a transformational, divine relationship, dating coach, the whole package. And I found Jamie through a post that he'd written and shared on Facebook. And at the time, it was anonymous. And I shared the post, and I was determined to find out who the author was to invite him on the show. And I did. And he accepted the invitation. So I'm very honoured to have Jamie on today. So enjoy the show. Hello, Jamie Ray. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Thank you so much for having me, Gemma. It's great to be here.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Whereabout in the world are you?
So I'm Vancouver, BC, Canada. And I always say it that way just so, because there's a Vancouver, Washington in the US. So so I'm Vancouver, BC, Canada, Canadian.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mentioned in my intro how we connected. So I saw a post that you had written in a group, and it was anonymous. And I don't share much because I do my own writing, but this hit me in a place that I'm like, wow, this is so pivotal to what Heart Warriors is all about. I'm going to share this, and I'm going to try and find who wrote it because I like to credit them. So I put all that in the post, and someone commented, oh, I think that's Jamie Ray. So I looked it up and I found your page and I asked you, and you said, oh yeah, I think so. And I said, would you please confirm 100% before I credit you, and and you didn't. It was only because you wrote it a few years ago, right? And so anyway, so here you are, and I'm going to ask you when you're ready to read that post so that then we can open up the whole conversation.
Amazing. And thank you so much for being so considerate with that and for reaching out and for accrediting me with that. I really appreciate how considerate you were. And yeah, like I was like, I'm pretty sure this is me, but it was a few years ago, and so I had to like look at what you had sent me and kind of compare lines, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that was for sure me. So thank you for that. And so I'll go ahead and read this, and I'm going to try and read it from my root the best that I can to kind of ignite that fiery energy. So here we go. This post is a battle call for men. First off, in order to be in integrity with my audience, I have to put myself in the dirt with all the men who have not held their responsibility in relationships. I am learning, growing, and take full responsibility for not holding the reins of my masculine responsibility in past relationships when it came to dictating growth of the relationship. Men, I am one of you. And to that, I say we all need to be fucking better. We have to. Our women deserve better. Men, it is our responsibility to dictate the container of the relationship. We are in charge of the direction of growth in our relationship. This is our responsibility. And we're failing our women. We're failing them. There is a staggering stat out there. Something like 75% of women are the ones to bring up the hard conversations in relationships. This is not acceptable. When this happens, our women don't trust us. They can't count on us. They have to take charge. They have to assume the masculine responsibility. They can't soften into our love. They're trying to find our love. It's also almost all women trying to drag their male partners into personal growth. Women fighting so fucking hard for their men to fucking fight for them. Do we realize this, men? This is our women wanting to feel more of our love. They just want more of us. They want to feel chosen, to feel fought for. You know what they want? They want to fucking surrender and submit to us. That's what they want. They want to worship us. They want to tell us how much they want us. They want to feel safe owning every ounce of their desire for us. So they're so free, they're screaming from their fucking heart and vagina in simultaneous unison. They want to worship our dicks. They want to worship our hearts. But we have to give them a reason to. That's what they want. They want to open to us so utterly it will rock our entire fucking world. But if they don't trust us, if they don't trust us to take control of the relationship, they will not be any of these things to us. They will close off. They will close their legs, close their hearts, shut down their light. It's okay to feel shame around this, or have fear that you won't be able to give the love your woman deserves, or feel shame that you aren't sexually sufficient to fucking ravish your woman. It's okay to have all of that. Own it. Embrace it. Allow yourself to be scared. Scream your shame aloud. Be present to all of this and go anyway. Take a leap anyway. Fail horribly. Look dumb. Look stupid. Be utterly open and vulnerable with your love, with your desires, with every part of you, and don't hold back. Stick out your chest. Channel your cock and own your fucking truth. Own it and be scared. Lead her, devour her, guide her. Allow her to soften towards her dream and her undying light. It is our responsibility to tell her where we are going, to paint her the picture, to bring it to her. Bring up the hard conversations. If your sex life sucks, be the one to initiate this conversation with your woman and tell her what you want your sex life to look like. Paint her a fucking picture. Tell her what turns you on. Tell her what you desire. Initiate with her. Tell her how fucking badly you want her. If you're disconnected, be the first one to take that step and say you're disconnected. If things are awkward, say that they're awkward. Own every elephant in the room. Do not wait for her to bring it up. You bring it up. You fucking own it with shaky hands and a heart beating a million beats a minute. You fucking own it. You let that woman's nervous system rest. You let her rest. Let the woman rest, man. When you take charge with your woman, she exhales and says internally to herself, it is safe for me to have my dream now. So when you fail to guide her and ground her, you steal her fucking dream from her. I'm fired up tonight, and this is fucking bullshit. Men, this is fucking bullshit. Our women are suffering because there is an epidemic of men not taking their relational responsibility. We're in charge of dictating what the container of our relationship looks like. Of course, she's part of the conversation. This is not a dictatorship, but we must go first. We must lead her where we want to go. We must dictate the growth of the relationship most of the time. If we're not doing that, we're failing our masculine responsibility, and she won't trust us. She won't. If our women are dragging us into growth, if we're scoffing our feet at the idea of working on ourselves, if we're waiting for her to tell us what she wants, we're failing her. She is suffering. Whether she even knows it or not, she is suffering with you. It's time to wake up. Sure, she may say that she trusts you, but her body won't, not fully. You'll be with your woman, but she'll never open to you fully. She'll always withhold a part of herself from you because deep, deep in her body, she does not trust you. How does that feel? Knowing you're with your woman, but she's not opening to you fully? Knowing she's not being ravished by you in every way her soul, heart, and body utterly desire? Fucking hurts, doesn't it? It's time for us to step up, to assume our responsibility. We must not look for her validation or reassurance. We have to be willing to upset her, trigger her, or disagree with her. Just as long as we're walking in alignment with the highest intention of our heart and soul. It doesn't matter how much money you make. All that matters is your fucking commitment to your highest purpose. A broke man with integrity is more of a man than a millionaire who is out of alignment with his greatest truth. We don't need things to be a man. We don't need stuff. We just need to guide her and lead her where our truth wants to go. What do we want? Where do we want to go? What do we want our love to look like? Our lives to look like? We must go first. If we wait for her to decide for us, we're failing her. We must move the train. It's her job to decide if she wants to hop on and be a part of our hero's mission on this planet. Men, in order to do this for our women, we have to be willing to lose our women. It's the only way. It's the only way we can lead her to her dream, by owning our truth powerfully enough that she might leave us because of it. Sure, by not owning that, we may still have our woman, but we will never actually have our woman. You understand? She actually will never have herself. It will be a repressed cage, ambiguous type of love. It won't be fierce. It will never be fierce. Don't we all want to love something fierce? Something so fucking fierce we both want to come and cry at the same fucking time? It's what we all want. And if you say you don't want that, you're a fucking liar. We have to meet our edge constantly. We have to be willing to die constantly. We have to meet our maker. We have to meet our hurt. We have to meet our trauma. We have to meet the depths of our bodies and all the pain that comes along with it. We have to go so in our fucking bodies to read her body that we can feel her body and we can sense when something is off. And we dictate the container from this awareness. We assume the responsibility so she can rest. So she can rest and be the love she craves. And we must hold that discomfort, hold it, and love harder, love harder. We must not allow that discomfort of her light dimming to lead us to retreat, but for it to push us to pry her open, to be the jester for her heart, to lead her to the arrival of the greatest truth in that moment. When we don't do this, when we're not willing to die our deaths and meet our pain, we will never be able to bring our women their relational dream. When they drag us along, they're dying a slow death. Their feminine dies a slow death. They will guide us and they won't want to fuck us. They will look at us as boys with anger, with resentment, with rage that is warranted and valid. And this is not okay. This is fucking bullshit. Men, it's our job to dictate what the container of our relationship looks like. We're in charge of the growth of our relationship. We're in charge of its direction. Stop waiting for her to take the lead. You're killing her slowly when you do this. Every time she has to be the one to bring up that hard conversation, to control the direction, you're failing her. And her life force is suffering because of it. Men, this is a battle call. It's time we all get to work. It's time we bring the women of the world the dream that lives in their bodies. It's time they stop dragging us into relational growth. It's time we lead them like we're on the fucking battlefield. Women are the portal to the divine, but only if we can allow them to soften into the gifts they're here to bring. Men, it's time for us to step the fuck up, because right now we're killing our women.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're very welcome.
I felt that so deeply. I was in tears at one point, just, and hearing it. It's one thing to read it, but to hear it spoken in that energy that it was written in. So what motivated this post? What was going on in your life when you wrote it?
At that time, I was going through a breakup. I was probably thinking back, I think I was about 4 months removed from a breakup. And I was kind of saying the post to myself at the time, because in my previous relationship, I feel, while there were areas that I did a really great job in that relationship, there were also areas that I was out of integrity. And I was reflecting on my shadow of that relationship. And there were areas that I was out of integrity and ways that I failed her. And I wanted to take responsibility for those things. And so I was coming into that fiery energy to in reflection to myself, and in the midst of calling myself forward, wanting to call other men forward. And so it was really realization in the ways that I had failed women in the same ways that I disclosed in that post.
Fascinating. And, it is a core issue that in so many relationships, but one that's coming out into the open now.
Mhm.
Where did it happen as you were growing up that this wasn't taught to you as a young boy? Like, what
Yeah.
was your upbringing that you had to wait till, adulthood to realize this?
Yeah. And so, I think just generally with men, it's a lack of initiation. It's a lack of, oh, this is what you do to become a man. So it's a lack of a blueprint. And for me personally, it was that I love my dad and I have, like a great relationship with him in a lot of ways, but I was never taught what it meant to be a man. I was never taught. I was never like, this is what you do, let me show you. And so it was more of an emotionally unavailable passive approach. And that emotionally unavailable passive approach led to me becoming more enmeshed with my feminine and enmeshed with my mother as a way to survive and as a way to cope with that. And me personally, it led to so much shame because of that enmeshment to my feminine. I couldn't be connected to my masculine. And it felt like this core incompetency when it came to my masculine, because the masculine's like, think about it very plainly put, I'm going to go out into the open and learn how to do something I don't know how to do. I'm going to go into the middle of the fucking road and I'm going to struggle. I'm going to struggle and I'm going to suffer and I'm going to figure it out for myself and become self reliant. And when a man is enmeshed with his feminine, it quickly retreats back into the area of protection, which builds up a lot of core fear. And so you have a lot of core fear in your nervous system, and your life reflects that core fear. And so you never expand into your potential or your masculine fire.
So, at what point did you realize that you needed to step up and be a leadership? Was it at the end of this relationship, or were you aware of the notion beforehand?
Yeah, I would say that I was aware of the notion beforehand. I would say it was when I started to go through my first spiritual awakening that I began to tap into these sort of things, and I just began to get little glimpses of my power, I guess you could say. And as I got little glimpses of my power, and I would say how we transmuted the darkness into power or the light. I think inherently when we go from darkness to light, we feel in that transmutation from dark to light, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility when we go from dark to light that I've been here and I found this from there. And now I have a fucking duty or I have a responsibility to help other people transmute their darkness to light. And so I think it was my first iteration of awakening where I went into darkness and I really got to know suffering. And so I think it was suffering and then finding some salvation on the other side of my suffering. In that came responsibility.
Okay, so can we go into a bit of your journey? Let's start with your childhood. What would you say was the major challenge you had to overcome as a little boy?
You know, I think for me, the biggest thing, so I had a really bad anxiety disorder when I was young. And this is all stuff that was imprinted into me when I was in the womb. So it's not like there was like a core event that happened and all of a sudden I developed the anxiety disorder. It was a lot of turmoil and turbulence when my mom was pregnant with me. And this led to just being, kind of this anxious imprint put into my system. And so what that did was it kind of created this path for me where I remember um, just feeling that there was something wrong with me. I would say it was a core feeling that there was something wrong with me, that I felt like I wasn't a sufficient human being. I wasn't a fully functional human being. And I would say that came along with the lack of masculine teaching, the feminine enmeshment, along with this core anxiety disorder. I had a lot of fear, which kind of led to this just deep shame of like, why am I like this? Why does it feel like there's something wrong with me? And that was just very limiting when you have a lot of fear where, you don't want to go down a slide as a kid because you're terrified. And it brings this story that you feel like a burden. You feel like a burden because you have this thing and you need people to be patient and gentle with you. And that's hard for people to be that patient and gentle, particularly if they don't fully understand. And so it really created this deep, deep shame story for me that I'm a burden. There's something wrong with me. And so I would say the biggest burden was overcoming not feeling like a fully functional human being and having so much core fear in my nervous system that I've had to slowly unwind from so that I can feel more like my own anchor or my own root or my own tree trunk, because I always had that flighty kind of bird energy, and just trying to ground myself in all of that has been probably I'd say the biggest stuff I've had to work through.
Pivotal point in that journey of you working through anxiety that shifted something inside you, and what was that?
Honestly, probably like the biggest thing that I've gone through with my anxiety was what I've gone through the past 2 years that I've come out the other side, where I was in the hospital with compressed discs in my back. And, so the back's connected to the central nervous system. When our back goes out, it usually means that our patterns are not working. The way that we're operating in the world is no longer functional. And so I had all this compression. It was right when I was about to move. I was about to move from Canada to Austin, Texas, for this woman who's now my girlfriend. And my back just totally compressed at the time. And so what it was a really, really deep layer of my unconscious coming into awareness. And I've spent 2 years purging every single day of unwinding my nervous system. And so I've just purged terror and ancestral demons and entities, past life karma, literally everything in the span of 2 years. And so I've really had this gnarly witnessing of what my system was holding, which has brought up my anxiety to the surface and required me to work with it in a way that I had never been able to. And my anxiety is still there, and it's probably something that I'm going to have my entire life in some respect, but it has transformed the way that I relate to it and the way that I work with it, and allowed me to find my power through it. But it's been these past 2 years where all that was kind of behind that anxiety and the underpinnings of my system, it's like a demon or a monster that I faced off square in the face with.
Wow. Yeah, I just want to explore this a bit deeper. So when you
Of
said the
course.
past 2 years you worked through things like past lives and karma
Yeah.
and stuff, what tools, practices, how did you do the work practically?
Yeah. So, I've done somatic therapy. I've worked with a somatic therapist for a long time. But the biggest thing, the thing that saved my life in terms of supporting me, is I done cranial sacral therapy probably 3 times a week for the past couple of years. And it literally, because cranial sacral therapy, for one, physically just helped my back. Just a gentle decompression of the spine has been really gentle and really helped with the compression of my back, but also it just helped move things around and open up my energy centers and open up my chakras. And so that work has been the most supportive in allowing me to move things. But the biggest thing is, again, it's falling off the fucking cliff. It's falling off the cliff because we want to know we're going to be okay. So it's this. And the big thing is that we have to allow ourselves to die. We actually have to fully allow ourselves to welcome death. And because that's what happens when we work with trauma at that level, we are ultimately having a visceral experience of death in a way that feels so tangible and real, because we really are dying. We're shifting paradigms. We're working at the core root of our material. And the scary thing is there's no memories associated with it. When you're working in other realms, when you're working in other generations, other lives, when you're not working in specifically just your lifetime, it's such a dense, overwhelming energy that you can't pinpoint it, and it totally overwhelms your system. It is like a full body, visceral experience of overwhelm and death. And so, yes, I've had these practitioners, somatic therapy, breath work, craniosacral therapy, worked with other spiritual mentors and healers and psychics. But the biggest learning has been experiencing the horror in my body, and eventually through the horror finding the miracle.
Ooh. Did you say whore?
horror, HORROR, the horror in your body to the miracle.
What's the whore?
So the horror and the tear, like, it's like a horror. If it's a
The
horror
whole?
movie, horror. So like tear, like
Oh, I
nightmare.
don't know that word, so thank you.
Yeah, it might be a North American thing. So
Because, like, whore, WHORE, has got a
yeah,
different meaning. So I just wanted
yeah.
to clarify that.
No, that's not what I was talking about. Yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. So, is there anything more that you want to say about anxiety before and your journey with it before we move on?
You know, I think just with anxiety is that we need to remove shame from anxiety, and that we have this idea that there is something wrong with us. Why don't I have anxiety? And there's this idea when we see people who don't have anxiety, and I think that was my story for a long time. And the truth is, I was a fetus when my anxiety was imprinted into my system. And I don't have anxiety because something happened to me. I've had anxiety my entire life, but it was revealed at a certain time. And so just realizing that it is not my fault, and it's okay, and I can work with it. And I don't hold blame over my parents. I don't hold resentment. It's been my journey and my pathway to my power. But just really releasing that shame and allowance has been the biggest thing that's helped my anxiety. Surrender, letting go, and allowing. And when you feel it, just to try and let go of that shame the best you can, because when we hold up that shame, we're not able to access like what's underneath the anxiety. And what's underneath the anxiety is just so much grief, so much fear, so much sadness, so much stuff that we're holding on to that we can never access. And when we allow, we begin to break these patterns and these cycles and these kind of karmic loops, and we begin to work with the material that's behind the anxiety. And maybe it doesn't completely eradicate our anxiety, but it really shifts our relationship to it.
Now, you're a divine transformational coach. So, where does divinity and spirituality play with you taking on this journey of anxiety and being born into this carnation with it? Did
Yeah.
you plan that on a higher level? Was it random?
Mhm.
What happens with the circumstances that we're born into?
So I feel we're born into something where we have these inherent gifts, but we also have these shadow aspects of the gift. And I feel that our ultimate divinity and our power comes from amplifying those natural gifts that our path has, and then beginning to integrate the shadow of those gifts. And I think for me, my soul obviously had a higher purpose with all this. And I think my anxiety and my experience with anxiety, what it's forced me to do is go through this heightened experience of death. Because what is the divine? The level of divine we know is the level of transformation, ascension, and activation that we experience on the other side of death, right? So when we die, we become reborn as the divine. So we don't even begin to enter the divine till we know death at the most visceral level, because it goes descent to ascend. That's how we ascend. We have to go to the earth before we can go to the sky. Energy goes down and then it goes up. And so I kind of see the divine as we have to put our ancestors in the ground. We have to descend and put our ancestors in the ground so that we're free, so that we're, not held back by the restraints of our lineage, so that we're totally unencumbered, so that our spirit, our vibration is totally unbound, so we can move to the sky. And I think my anxiety has been, a part of that facilitation of bringing my anxiety. It's heightened the visceral experience of death. It's made it that much more terrifying for my system. I think we're all terrified of death, but people with anxiety can really have their threats are really tightly wound. They're really acute. The body's holding. They're a lot more on guard. They're constantly scanning, and it's what their body feels like it's had to do to protect and to survive. And so when you have anxiety and you go through a process of divine transformation, what you're doing is you're facing every single threat in the body. You're facing every single threat in the body. Because what is the fucking divine? The divine is where you inherently trust that you're taken care of.
Yes.
What is anxiety? Anxiety is I don't feel safe. I don't feel okay. I need to constantly scan my environment. I need to constantly scan for threats and make sure that I'm okay, because inherently I don't feel like I'm okay. And so that is completely in opposition to what divine energy is. Divine energy is I'm okay even in death. Even on my deathbed, I am okay. And that's like the ultimate level of divinity, that even if we're on our deathbed, we are at peace. We are surrendering, letting go, and not fighting this experience, because it's part of our incarnation at this point in our journey. And so that is completely counterintuitive to what it feels like to have anxiety. And so it's been having to confront that. And I feel like such a heightened way for me because of that.
Oh, amazing. Yes. And I'm totally in total resonance. So what would you say to a man who says, well, it's okay for some, but I had such a rough start in life, parents, blah, 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 home situation, blah, 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 this happened, it's just not easy for me to work through all that. Can you give him some meaning in a
Yeah.
nutshell as to why he was born into that situation and maybe someone else was born into an easier situation?
It's obviously really, really hard to answer that question. Why was someone born in this situation? And why was someone born in that situation? And I think the biggest thing is that it's all relative, and that the experience that we feel in our, for example, it's just like if you do a lot of research, people, that come from Africa and like, third world countries and have endured so much more trauma, their nervous systems are so much more resilient, right? And it's because it's just a lot of times it's all so relative of what we learn to experience, and so it's all that we know, but it's still going to create a relative impact on our system. So that's why trauma is all relative. It's like you could have an experience that was seemingly not that insignificant, or seemingly, sorry, not that significant, but it impacted your nervous system and created such a break and connection in your system that it feels so big. And I think the really important thing is that we can't demean anyone's experience, and that everyone is having a relative experience for, I guess, their specific journey in the physical form on this time in earth. And if we think of divinity and spirituality, I see it as our soul is trying to find a home in the body. Our soul is trying to find a home in the physical flesh. So, how do we move through the layers of our body, which requires moving through layers of trauma, in order to find the full unfiltered vibration of the soul? And so that experience is all subjective and relative to each and every person, and why some people have a way harder time than someone else. I'm not even able to answer that, because it's who really knows. But I do think that what that does create is an opportunity, because in two ways. Because a specific upbringing, say someone comes from a really difficult upbringing, where they move through a lot of difficulty and they have to learn how to fend for themselves, there's going to be probably likely a level of resilience in that person, even if they do have a lot of compounded trauma. There's going to be a level of resilience that they'll have that I won't have.
Yeah.
There's going to be a level of resilience who someone comes from way more difficult trauma than I do, which is nothing compared to what most people have to go through. And they'll have a resilience that I won't have, and so that resilience is a gift. That resilience becomes a gift. But then there's shadow aspects of that resilience, which become our work, For me in my path, the thing about me, when I'm spoon fed, oh, here you go, this cushy little living, what it creates is a lack of resilience. That's my shadow, is a lack of resilience. But the gift that I was given is a capacity to speak my voice very easily, the capacity to be free, because I was a child. I was told that I was special too much. So now my specific journey, it creates a fucking hero's journey, because my resilience becomes my hero. my resilience becomes my hero. For that person who has all the resilience, finding their voice, learning how to be safe, learning how to express themselves could be their hero's journey. So it's all that integration of, we have these amazing things that are specific to our parents, our ancestors, our environment we come. There's also shadow aspects of those gifts that become the chunk of our work so that we can find wholeness. And what that does, I think it's beautiful, is it creates a story. It creates a very unique and specific to each individual person. And that's what I see is it's someone's individual journey with God is their specific individual story. And when you look at it like that, it is a very heroic path that we have the opportunity to go down if we want to, if we feel like we're able to, because not everyone has the opportunities to do it, and some people have to fight in survival until the day that we die. And so that's why if we have an opportunity, which I feel fortunate enough to have an opportunity, then our job is to help as many people that can find the path as possible.
Oh, such clarity around that. Thank you, Jamie. I was interested what you said now about survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does it, like when we're in survival, we can't,
Mm-hmm.
I always thought we can't really fine tune that connection with the divine, with creativity. And maybe that's the greater agenda of those in control, to keep the population in survival mode so they don't have time and the peace of heart to connect with the divine. Have you got anything to expand on this, and specifically to the masculine journey?
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things here, right? So living in survival, yes, we're not able to access a certain depth of our creativity. And because creativity and sexual expression, those kind of work proportion to our core level of safety. And I think, if we're speaking to the masculine, right, there's a certain cultural, societal conditioning that is being predisposed and put onto us. And I think a lot of that is around what it means to be a man, right? Because if we think about what it means to be a man, and I'll use the very real world simple expression of, say it's a man on Wall Street, right? So he's got an expression of power. He works for a hedge fund or something. He makes all this money, but he is living his power in a archetype or framework of the toxic masculine. He is living the power of masculine in a survivalist world, right? Because what would survival be? Survival would be that, and for what do men want? What does the masculine want? Ultimately, we want freedom, right? So a survivalist approach to masculinity is, how do we create freedom outside of ourselves? How is freedom something we capture? Some men look for it through sex. They look for it through collecting watches. They look for it through houses and money, power in the workplace. And that's a trap. That is a survivalist trap that we're living, where one day, someday, I'm going to be free. And it's a trap. And what happens is we hit our deathbed and we're like, I'm still not fucking free. I'm still not free. And so how do we recalibrate that framework? Is the divine masculine is freedom of consciousness. And the big thing is, how do we get freedom of consciousness? It is freedom of the body. So we need to be free at an embodied level. Now what happens is our energy becomes a service. It becomes a gift that we can give our energy to open, to penetrate, to bring the truth, to expand the truth, to lift people up, to deepen people, to help people, to be useful. And so our energy creates an entirely different shift. And now what happens is, sure, we may make money, but the money comes from an internal freedom. Yes, something like making a lot of money would amplify that freedom. We have to live in the fucking world, but there is an internal freedom. So what happens is that person is totally free. They don't need anything. They don't need anything. Nothing is a covert attempt to self-satisfy their own freedom, because they are already free. So now they can offer. Now they can give. Their energy is a sacred offering. And so that is what I feel like the framework, and how it shifts from this survival masculine to what does it mean to a thriving masculine? What does it mean to a healthy masculine? And this is like a framework of the divine masculine, is how does a man occupy divine consciousness, divine freedom in the body, divine freedom of form, which is that my soul is totally unfiltered, totally unobstructed, totally rooted, totally grounded, totally embodied. Now I can give. Now I can provide. Now I can protect with every ounce of my fiber in my being.
Powerful. And it's such a huge shift in, I mean, us women go through it too, but this is focused on the masculine journey. And as you said, we're taught, we're programmed, we're conditioned that run on the treadmill, freedom's out there, the dangling carrot, another new car, another fancy holiday, a bigger house, a promotion, and all the energy, the masculine energy is kept focused out on the external, when the true power is internal, right?
Right, completely.
What happened in your adulthood to make you understand this shift?
Complete and utter suffering. Complete and utter suffering. You have to meet your maker. Like, you have to completely, utterly meet your maker. So a man's relationship to freedom is his relationship to death. And I'll bring that even further, is that a man needs to die and become born as his light. And that's a very distinct shift. That's a very distinct transmutation that needs to take place. It's through a death. It is complete and utter fucking allowance. That's what happens.
So are you able to go into your experience of that? What was happening? What was the catalyst? What was your deepest, darkest moment? And how did you start spiraling up?
Yeah. And so, for me, it was in these past 2 years, at points suicidal, at points being like, I don't know if I can go on, because this is like the amount of darkness that I am unpacking. It was like being in this nightmare. It was like being in a haunted house and there's no escaping. It was like being in a haunted house and there's literally no escaping. It's like having your deepest fear being realized in real time, and it feels so overwhelming that it psychologically fucks you up. And and the catalyst for that was, honestly, it was moving through enough layers of that until the sun began to come through. The sun began to come through. And so I had to move through darkness and darkness. It's like moving through, you're at sea and you're moving through squalls and storms and, thunder and lightning and rainstorms. And eventually there's a little peak of the light and your body. And so this is where the allowance happens, is the darkness is trying to create space. So it's trying to purge, to excavate the dark so that it can make room to hold the light. And so it was moving through enough darkness that you slowly, incrementally are able to hold a little more light and a little more light. Bit by bit, you're able to hold a little bit more light. And then this is what happens. You fully descended, you're moving up the body towards the crown, right? This is how ascension happens. And the crown is total and utter allowance. It is joy. It is levity. It is, I am going to allow myself to have the dream. I am going to allow myself to have the gift. I'm going to allow myself anything and everything I have ever wanted. I don't have to suffer. And so when we suffer for long enough, for hard enough, at a deep enough level, And then we begin to move through it enough to find a little of the light, and it becomes safer to hold that light. We allow ourselves to feel good. And now we give ourselves this dream. We give ourselves the thing that we've always wanted, because why don't we have everything we've wanted? Because it doesn't feel safe to. It doesn't feel safe to hold it. And usually there's so much density, there's so much stuff that's blocking and holding the system down that it can't expand up and outstretch its arms. So there's a bridge or a rite of passage or an initiation with knowing enough darkness, and then the sun and the light begins to come, and the ascension really begins, and we learn to allow that. And so I can't really say the specific moment when I hit the point where it shifted, but it hit a point where I was like, I'm ready to ascend. I just knew I'm ready to go up. I'm ready to begin to hold everything I've ever wanted.
Yes, that's really great. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
Is there, how does a man, so I'm getting now, so a man is in this situation of utter suffering. Now, is often the suffering because he's trying to live out the dream of someone else, whether it be his parents, his wife, his upbringing, his boss, and he's not in true alignment with his own self, and that creates suffering? Can you speak into that, and how can what are the first steps he can start to take to align his path to his true mission instead of living out someone else's mission and creating this suffering?
Yeah. So I love that question. And so the man is suffering. And why is it we're suffering, right? And so oftentimes, typically, that we're our own worst enemy in our suffering. And we are in our own way. And yeah, so maybe we're trying to live the dreams of our parents. Maybe we're trying to live the dreams of our coach, right? So we're out of alignment in some degree. We're out of alignment because it doesn't feel safe to be in alignment. And you know, we all have these loops and these karmic patterns that we play out. And those karmic patterns play a fundamental role in our survival patterns. And so these patterns that we play out, we grow up in our family and we create like a core survival identity, right? A way that we learn to survive our particular environment. What happens is that formulates in our nervous system, and that imprints into our system. That creates our story. We're all storytellers. That becomes our story. And our story creates patterns, it creates behaviors, it creates actions, it creates loops. And so we continue to act in those loops. And for people that go through awakening, essentially what it is they reach a breaking point with those survivalist patterns where how they're operating are no longer working. And the great and difficult aspect is they're likely being asked to come awake in this lifetime, because that is what their carnation and in this lifetime in earth is all about, right? Is coming fully awake. And so now they come into this point of restitution, this point of intervention, this point of karmic intervention, where they're being asked to change their patterns. And so typically we're suffering because our survivalist patterns, our survivalist identity, our karmic loops and behaviors are no longer working for us. We're coming to this realization that it's like hitting our head against a wall, that we keep coming up against the same things, the same threats, the same limitations, because this survivalist identity, it creates a box. This box you could call our ego. This is how we establish our reality. This is how we formulate our world. So this box, outside this box is everything we've ever wanted. Outside that box is our power. And so what happens is we reach a point where we're like, oh, I want to reach my potential. And I realize, or my body realizes, that being in this box is not going to do it. And I have to change. And when we slowly are coming into that realization, we really begin to suffer. we really begin to suffer. Because how else are we going to be motivated to change? There needs to be a certain level of resistance, of obstacle, of difficulty to motivate us. Because it's the activation of a hero's journey. A hero needs an enemy, or a hero needs an adventure. A hero needs a mission. And so the mission becomes ourself. The mission becomes ourself. And so that's what happens in suffering. And so you asked, a man is at this point where he's suffering. He wants to change. And so there's a couple things that point out to me here. Is one is what we need to do is we need to create safety. We need to create safety, because we're at this point where these patterns aren't changing. And what we first need to do is not change our life. And this is the biggest thing, is not change our life. We need to change the way we relate to what arises within us. We have to change the way that we relate to what arises within us. And so what I do with men who are early on is it's about going into what I call the unconscious discovery, which is a feminine descent. And so if you're a man and you're at a point where you're suffering, you want to change and you're ready, work with a healer or coach or therapist or practitioner that works in the body, that has knowledge of the body, and focus on learning and understanding the language of your body. So I call this the unconscious discovery, or a feminine descent. And so in my men's program, this is the whole first half of the program, is about this unconscious discovery. It's a feminine descent. It's about we're learning the story of the flesh. We're learning the story of your body to learn where you come from. And a big part of that unconscious discovery is learning to relate to what arises in the body with compassion. Because when we're suffering, our body is not responding the way that we want to respond. And we're living in this war, this antagonization with our body, which is going to lead the body to protecting more, clamping down, shutting down more. And so we have to open and relate to the body with this gentle curiosity and witnessing and validation, so that we can work with the body and it will open. And so that's kind of the first steps to creating safety.
I love how you said that, because it's easy to just maybe just pack up and move house, or leave a relationship or whatever. But if you haven't done the inner work, that's going to chase you, isn't it, to the next house, to the next relationship. So what you said, to do the inner work first, and then how I see it, if you agree, is our outer aligns with our inner. Now, whether that's the collapse of the current relationship or the living situation, but to do the inner work first, or it's just going to follow you around, right?
Completely, right? So it's our external is always a reflection of what we are seeing. It's a reflection of what we're seeing. And so, changing the internal, what it does is it allows us to see something different in the external reality. And what it ultimately does, as it allows us to see something different in the external reality, it allows us to see a new pathway, a new story. And it's usually a more positive, inspiring, and uplifting story that we see, as opposed to the disempowering, shame-ridden, nothing is working for me, everything is working against. So it's like, as we change the inner, what we're doing is we're seeing we're shifting paradigms, in the sense we're seeing something different in the external reality, and that amplifies and picks up momentum, which expands more of our inner reality and more of our outer reality.
Yes, so true. As within, so without. As above, so below. Jamie, we've got about half an hour left. What direction would you like to take this conversation in? What needs to be spoken from you to men about your journey, masculinity?
So that's a good question. And, something that has been coming into my field, and I'll just speak to that because that's just what's true right now in this moment. And you don't have to, and I don't know, this is not like necessarily what I want to talk about for the whole next 30 minutes, but it's present right now with me in this moment, is this idea of being masculine doesn't mean being this quote unquote manly man. You know, we have this idea of what it means to be a masculine, and it's like he does axe throwing, he hunts, he's an outdoorsman, he's got a big beard, he's got a really deep voice, he's big and strong, he you know, he does combat sports, he boxes, he doesn't it's very much this kind of image, right? And so we associate masculine energy with that. And I think what the big thing is that we have so much masculine energy. Masculine energy is the amount of depth and presence and your capacity to penetrate with your energy. And that has nothing to do with this external image. You could be so in touch with your feminine and have a masculine core and access your masculine. Your relationship with your masculine is your capacity to access the full magnitude of your life force energy. It's got nothing to do with this external image that we projected. That is just this manifestation of what culturally and societally we've said is to be a man. But what masculinity is if we're a man who identifies with a masculine essence, it is living the full vibration of your life force energy, totally unfiltered, and having that fire and that power coming from your body. That's what it means to be a man. That's what it means to be masculine. And because there were times where years ago, you know, when I was doing things like men's work and everyone's like, you're so in touch with your feminine. And it really kind of brought up this shame because I wasn't this masculine kind of manly man. I've always had a lot of both. I've always been really in touch with my feminine, but also had a lot of masculine energy. Like I love romantic comedies and war movies equally. I love to wear bright colors, but I'm also, you know, so many of my friends are guys type things. And so it's really this duality. And so, and what I've learned, and I guess this actually might bring me more if we're talking about men, what I've learned is actually how we get to our masculine is through the feminine.
Yes.
How we get to our masculine is through the feminine. And so if we think about it like, this is like our foundation for our life. And masculinity is like this is in the relate for men. And our masculinity is like the house on top. And for men, the feminine, which is more the body, is like the foundation of the house. It's the foundation of the house. And so men are always trying to build on the surface. They're like, I cold plunge. I go to accountability circles, which do help in putting you in your masculine. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's not the divine masculine. The divine masculine is working with the masculine in the body and the nervous system. It is specifically working with masculine energy in the nervous system. That is what the divine masculine is. And so what happens is as we deal with our feminine, we're untangling, peeling back cords of the feminine. And through that process, it's kind of like the feminine cords are like sucking that vibration of the masculine. So like we don't feel safe in our masculine power because we're still binded with the feminine. We still have these cords of the feminine that don't allow us to feel safe. So what happens now is as we deal with our feminine is we're pulling the cords off. So now it's like this big ball of energy. We're like, holy shit, I have like a raging boner. I want to fucking pound my girlfriend against the wall. I want to ravish her. I want to it's this fire, right? And so we feel this fire. And so that came by way of dealing with the feminine cords. Now the masculine is walking and activating on that path. And obviously, the more you get in your masculine, that's going to amplify it. It's going to amplify that. But when you fully deal with the feminine first, what you're doing is you're calibrating the full vibration of the power, the full vibration of the depth of the energy. And so, and that runs, I think, counterintuitive to what we think about masculinity. And the reason I've had this experience is it's so personal to my journey, my experience, and what I've witnessed in my clients every single day that I work with clients. I see this process play out and I see their entire energetic state changing within a matter of days as these shifts happen because they're untangling, they're untethering these cords. And this is where you create complete, deep soul integrity in your life, where a man actually feels in his body, where he actually has a home in his body. And so I think that's really important for men to understand, that, you know, that is the way to the divine masculine. And that is ultimately meeting your maker, or working at the absolute root of your stuff in your body. It's working at the absolute depth of the unconscious inside of yourself, the absolute depth of the unconscious. Because what is little boy energy? Little boy energy is when there's a separation between the unconscious and the conscious. What is man energy? Divine masculine energy is a merging between the conscious and the unconscious. It's this holy merging. That's what creates total embodiment.
Oh, I love that explanation. And and just your number, I think your Heart Warrior number 26. So
Cool.
out of 100, possibly more, but this is what we're witnessing. Every man is so different, and I'm really trying to get the whole range from
Mm,
axe cutters to poets to everything, to bring on this. And it's also great for us women to see masculinity isn't just that cookie cutter image that's portrayed. There's so
mm,
many beautiful masculine energies that are entwined with the feminine energy.
mm,
Now, it's interesting, what you just spoke about then. I also align with that journey with the masculine from what I've seen and understood, but I see it as um, they come into their heart, and that
mm,
then aligns them with the truth of their masculine, because
mm,
to be in the heart is where they find their authenticity, their true
mm,
alignment with the divine, and
mm,
they let go of control with what the image everyone else wants to make them, and they find their own true path and follow their mission.
mm,
Does that
mm.
resonate with you, with how you understand it?
Completely, yeah, and 100%. And so I think of the heart is like our heart opens in its total allowance and arrival of where we are, and
Yes.
having that be perfect, right? And so I kind of see the divine masculine as when the heart connects with the balls and the cock, because then what's happening is the heart is our relatedness to the world, as you say, our authenticity. It's our capacity to surrender ego and how we relate to the world, to be vulnerable, to be open, to have empathy. But then it's our power of our vibration and our core masculine essence to merge with the heart. So now it becomes directive, penetrative heart energy. So our capacity to love is fierce. That is what our capacity to love fierce is like, when the cock is involved in the heart,
Yes.
when there's a directive power. And so 100%, and through that feminine descent, we
Mm.
cleanse the palate of the heart. We're cleansing the palate of the heart. We're unarmoring the heart so that the heart can be free, so that we can live our truth as unconditional love. But we can live our truth as unconditional love. And that's what happens when you're around a man who is in his divine masculine, is you are around the deepest embodiment of truth.
Yes.
You're around the deepest embodiment of truth. There is no fucking bullshit in that space. There is no bullshit. And, you're called forward in a way that is loving, in that space, but you feel that presence, and it totally is rooted in the heart. It's that heart connectedness. But it's how a man feels connected to himself and others, in a way that allows his world to feel powerful.
So powerful. So how does a man connect to his heart?
Yeah, so specifically connect to his heart. So, again, I'm going to bring this back to, how does a man connect to his heart? Is we have these identities that usually block our heart. So those core survival identities,
Yes.
those are usually what block and protect the heart, because underneath that identity is truth. And so it's, again, creating safety through all the ways that I've mentioned, um, below the facades, below the masks, below the identities. And so, why is it that men had these identities, these facades, um, these barriers to their heart? Is because it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't
Mm.
feel safe to be that seen. It doesn't feel safe to be that in truth. And so, what is the way that you're going to allow someone to open their heart is incrementally creating more safety with themselves through a deep somatic embodied approach, that it's okay to be who they are, where they are. And through that process, organically, the heart begins to open. They learn that they're worthy of being loved, for the truth of who they are. And oftentimes, to really open our heart, it's back to like a lot of what I've said before. We have to, and this is actually how I've framed in my men's program, is that we have to learn to love ourselves at rock bottom. We have to love ourselves at the absolute worst, in the place you don't think anyone could possibly love you, in the place of your life where you don't think it's possible for anyone to choose you. You have to be able to open your heart there. And that is seeing ourselves, our worth and our value beyond form, our worth and our value just totally at our spirit, with rendered utterly defenseless. And so it really is, and that's what happens when we suffer, is we're being asked to open our heart. We're being asked to, can you love yourself in this difficult place? Can you love what you see when you see yourself suffer?
Jamie, are there, for not all men can afford to get into men's work when they're at that rock bottom point. Mm-hmm. Are there any tips, practices, tools that they can start with today at home?
Yeah. And so, the first place to begin just with anyone is just a gentle body scan. Just scan their body. And when you scan your body, what you're doing is, in your mind's eye, you're just imagining each and every part of your body. You're just like, I'm like this, and I'm imagining my feet and my shins and my calves and then my knees. And I'm just going to, sit at like an edge of a bed and have my feet planted. And this is like just when we're starting out, just when we've never really done any somatic stuff before, we've never really done any embodiment stuff. And so we have to just begin to bring our awareness to like, what the fuck is going on in our body? And so just for once or twice a day, just scan your body from head to toe for a couple minutes and just take note of, where in the body am I holding tension? Where in the body feels like a space of ease and flow? And just creating those distinctions, where it feels tension, tight, protecting, holding, where it feels like a space of ease and flow. And that space of ease and flow is a little embodied indicator of safety that we can find, that we can grab onto, because that tension, that tightness, that protection is a part of us that's kind of potentially activated, holding something. But that space of ease, that space of flow in the body, is our access point to safety right now, that there's a part of us that is okay. And so just as we kind of scan and we bring in those distinctions, what we're doing is we're just like learning what's even going on in my body. And so that's just where we want to start, with someone who's at a point where they're suffering, and no matter fucking how uncomfortable they are, they have to do that.
Because I think for men, just this to sit still in silence and awareness and tune into the body, is that something quite foreign for most men?
So I think it's something foreign for everyone.
Well.
I think it's something foreign for everyone. And, most people, and particularly like men, we live neck up. We live severed. We live severed, from our body. So it's like, what is the process of creating safety? It's beginning to bring our awareness into our body. And a lot of the times we don't live in our body because it's not safe to be in our body, because that was not a friendly and safe place to be. And so just beginning to create those small incremental steps of like bringing our awareness into that area is going to be foreign, but like going to the body is learning a new language. And so this process of creating embodied safety is completely the process of learning like a foreign language.
Yeah. Is it, I mean, we're taught that God, the divine, however you want to refer to it, is out there. but I feel it in the heart, in my body. So when you're talking about that, men are in their heads from there and to come into their body, is that when you started feeling more connected to divinity and faith and, the journey towards, the spiritual path had to be connected to the body?
100%. That's the way to the to God, is through the body, right?
Yes.
So we are a vessel, right? We are a vessel to contact the spirit. So I see as the ultimate culmination of God or the divine. I call it the divine frequency, when as every single energy center and chakra in your body opens simultaneously, and it creates this like glow, or this kind of musk of desire and pleasure all through your body. And that is essentially the Holy Spirit encompassing your entire form. So you're kind of this ball, or this glow of the divine. And so the body is the portal to the the divine and God. And so when we're not living in our body, we're missing an opportunity to live our potential. And our opportunity to live our potential is our opportunity to align our frequency with the frequency of God.
So the general hero's journey, as you said, is coming into the feminine for the masculine and coming into the heart. How does he then integrate the mind, the heart, the whole holistic body, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Because we know the masculine is in the head. So how does he do the whole package?
Well, and so it's this process, right? So I would call this like divine consciousness. So divine consciousness is the unconscious, like I mentioned earlier, links up with the conscious, and that's emerging. What that does is it's expanding your consciousness, which is expanding your mind. It's expanding the scope of your mind. So essentially what you're doing is you're expanding your reality. You're expanding what you know. So it's kind of the process of like the mind is observing the body. And eventually, as you progress in healing, the conscious mind links up with something happening in the unconscious realm. And it's like, holy shit, I get it. I get it. What that is, it's a little up level, a little expansion in our level of consciousness to more of a divine level of consciousness. Now our mind is syncing in complete tandem with the body, with the spirit, with the heart. We feel like one aligned frequency.
Yes.
That's when this is connected to the body, connected to spirit, connected to the heart. Again, related to the energy centers and the chakras opening in alignment. But those little clicks, I call them little eureka moments or breakthroughs, where we have body first transmissions, where the body realizes something and the mind follows after and understands what the body is showing and presenting. Now our mind is expanding in coordination. And that's how we link into the space of like what I call divine consciousness.
Beautiful. You mentioned earlier on that freedom was the masculine mission, which I've always thought as well, and the feminine being love. Can you speak about love and men and masculinity?
Yeah, I think the really important thing to say about that is that men find their freedom through the process of loving the way they want to love. So we always look traditionally that the relationship or the marriage is something that's kind of an obstacle in the way of our mission, right? But what about if and for women it's like the dream is the relationship. For men it's like number one is like their purpose, and number two is the relationship, right? And for women it's like the relationship and everything else is, and relationship and maybe kids, and everything else is kind of second tier to that, right? Whereas guys got his relationship, kids, and then he's got his mission, number one, right? So that's just kind of the theme that we kind of think about. And so that's also the difficulty, right, when it comes to relating, with men and women. But I think the important distinction for men is that what unlocks the purpose, the sacred purpose, is the same process that unlocks the heart. It's the same process that unlocks your capacity to receive and to give and offer love in the way that you've always wanted to. So when we create this separation or severing between relationship and purpose, what we're ultimately doing is we're limiting our capacity and potential in both arenas. But when they become one and the same, and the activation process is a symbiotic process, then we enter the divine in both realms, both arenas. We activate a level of our purpose that is totally congruent with our most expanded heart space. And so now our relationship becomes symbiotic with our purpose. The more we uplevel on our relationship and create a thriving relationship, positively impacts the deepening of our purpose, and the deepening of our purpose and opening our heart more and being more of service allows us to be more in our power and give our love to our partners in the way we desire. So they're completely, entirely symbiotic. And I think that's a very important distinction and feature of the divine masculine.
This is fascinating because I've got a couple of questions now. So on this journey with from, let's say, you know, the wounded masculine into the divine masculine, and we're talking about mission and we're talking about relationships. So mission is the masculine part, relationships are the feminine, but ultimately both genders, we want to be balanced and harmonized. So number one, if a man hasn't found his divine mission, is it true what I've heard? He will look for his mission in relationship. And two, does he have to find his divine mission and walk that path before he can be embodied in divine love with the feminine?
Yeah, so those are good questions, and I think you know, I would say a guy hasn't found his purpose. I would say there's a potential that he could look for relationships to fulfill his potential. But I wouldn't say that's like, oh, for every guy that hasn't found his purpose, he's going to look for it in relationships. You know, I think that's a blanket statement to say that, but I could definitely see how that could be true. But I think also just what goes into that is that men, when they don't have a purpose, will automatically move into the arena of love and relationships and probably have a pretty deep inherent sense of shame. A pretty deep sense of lack of fulfillment, of like, who am I, right? Because asking yourself who you are as a man, a big part of that is asking myself, what am I here to contribute? And if we don't know what we're here to contribute, that's going to impact your capacity to show up powerfully in relationship, right? So I think ultimately what is a more truer statement is that if we haven't found our path for our purpose, it is going to amplify a way of relating that is going to be less powerful, more child boy like, as opposed to more functional adult, more divine masculine. So I would say it's really going to impact how we show up. And what that might look like for a guy is pursuing a lot of short-lived sexual relationships with women, looking for his power through sex, through conquest. It could look for being with a lot of women who don't challenge him, who don't call him into higher integrity and higher mission. It could be being in a relationship with a really great woman, but he holds a lot of shame and is not in his power. And as a result, he steals her power from her as well. Or it could be avoiding relationship altogether. Or it could be, you know, being in the relationship and being way too focused on the relationship. So I think it could have a multitude of ways that it plays out, but I would say it heavily impacts his power in relationships, whatever form that shows up. I think is up for you know, it's variable depending on the situation. And what was the second part of the question again?
I think you pretty much covered it all. I think that answered all my questions around that, unless you've got anything else to say about that. I think I said, yeah, was the oh, okay, I let it go. I just let it go and let you go with it. So
I think it was something about like, if he doesn't know what his purpose is, like how does he find it? Or
well, that was going to be my next question. So
yeah,
let's roll with that.
Yeah, and so that's potentially what you might have asked. I was too much of a train of thought to remember as well.
You're ahead of me.
Yeah, and so the big thing, we got to allow ourselves to be lost. we got to be lost to be found. So it's like, if you don't know what your purpose is, you got to make, you can be in your masculine by declaring, I don't fucking know what my purpose is. Like say there's men in a circle and we're talking about purpose, and like say there's 11 guys in the circle, 10 guys are like, this is my purpose. And the 11th guy comes around to him and he feels all this shame in his body, right? And he's like, what am I going to say? Should I lie and come up with a, pretend purpose? Should I pass? What should I do? Right? So he feels already so inferior. The most masculine thing he can do is claiming that he doesn't know what his purpose is. Yeah. That admission is him being in his power.
Yes.
And so if we don't know what our purpose is, make the declaration that we don't know what it is and do something about it. So if we don't know what that purpose is, it's all about the energy that we surround the not knowing. Right? So if we surround, I don't know, and we hold shame about it, we're refusing an opportunity for ourselves to love ourselves where we are right now. And we're also robbing ourselves of an opportunity to unlock and find what that is. The only way we can find and know what that is if we fully welcome the fact we don't know. Right? So if we fully claim and declare the fact that we don't know. And so, if we don't know what it is, claim the fact we don't know, allow ourselves to be lost and discover and experiment, try new things, go outside of our comfort zone and bring ourselves on this trial and error journey, where it will come to us, and it will come to us when we least expect it or we don't know. It will come to us when we realize we stopped trying to search for what it is and we kind of gave up that whole pursuit, and then kind of from underneath in the background, it kind of came all on its own.
Yeah, I love that, because already by saying you don't know, you're in the energy of honesty, which is such a higher frequency for creation than lying or control of what you think you should say. So already you're opening up the space of creativity for your mission to come in. And is there truth to the saying, follow your passion to get to your mission?
Yes, I would totally say that there is. And because, that's a really important distinction, because our passion, I feel, is that's almost like a little sliver of what our mission actually is. For example, one of my passions is writing. And, I write all the time. I write every day. And as I've kind of expanded on this path and gone deeper, I've realized, writing is just like a part of my mission. Like writing is one of a few different mediums that I deliver my message.
Yeah.
But it is not, I wouldn't say writing is my mission. It is one small avenue to facilitate the energy and message of my mission. And so our passion, I feel like, will become inclusive in our mission, but I feel like our mission is something so much greater. And so to explain this, for me, like, I feel like I have passions for comedy. I have passions for performing. I have passions for writing. I have passions for speaking. And all of those are methods and avenue. But I feel my mission is to make people feel things at such a deep level and bring people into their absolute unfiltered, unfettered power and liberation. And just my writing is one of the ways that I give people permission to do that. And my writing is a passion, but my mission is so much bigger than just my passion.
Yeah, definitely something I can relate to. And well, you certainly achieved that by reading that first piece out to us. And I'd like to wrap up now, Jamie, with your final words to men. What would you like to say?
Final words to men. That it's going to be okay. That it's all going to be okay. And I think when you can feel the words inside yourself at such a visceral gut throw level, I'm going to be okay. Everything begins to change. Because I'm going to be okay is permission. It's the allowance. And so what I want to say to men who don't feel like they're going to be okay is that you are going to be okay, whether you believe it or not now, you will believe it one day, and that will be the day that your life begins to change.
Beautiful. And that's faith as well, right? Incorporating faith into your
Com-
journey, into our journey.
Completely.
Wow.
That's completely what it is. Yeah.
What an amazing conversation, Jamie. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun and such a invigorating and inspiring conversation. So I hope people got benefit from it. Men and women listening. Best place for people to find me, I'm just going to keep it very simple, is where I'm most active is on Instagram. And so you can find me on Instagram at Jamie, JAMIE .n.REA. So at jamie.n.ray is my Instagram handle. And I post on there almost daily, unless I'm super busy. And best place to kind of get a little taste of what I'm about. And yeah, so that's where I would direct everyone.
Okay. Do you have also, I mean, we can, if you forward me your links, please, I'll put them all in the description.
Of course.
Do you have, well, I know you're on Facebook, but do you have a website? Do you have YouTube? Are there other avenues people can find you who don't have Instagram?
Yeah, so I do have a website, but it's under construction right now. So I would not direct people there right now. And YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel, but it's all my comedy. So I don't have this type of content on there right now. So I also would not direct people there. So I would direct people to, and I'll give you the information, that you can include. But I'd say my Facebook page if you're on Facebook, or Instagram if you're on Instagram, and the exact same name, jamieandray.com, in the future in a couple months, because I'm just completely getting my whole website revamped.
Amazing. I've just got one last question, if I may, and it's a question I don't think I've asked any of the other men, but you're so aware of the masculine feminine dynamics. Have you got a message from men to women?
From men to women. You're asking me all these big juicy questions. A message from men to women. Yeah. And this is, again, what's in my field is that, and it's really in my field because of my girlfriend's daughter, and I think a lot about her. And it is our job to allow you to feel a firm presence. It is our duty to create a firm presence for you to feel protected in who you are. I think that is the most important thing that the masculine can bring to the feminine, is protection in who they are, just allowing themselves to be completely, utterly seen for who they are. And I think a lot about my girlfriend's little girl, and this idea where when you can feel that firm presence, that kind of anchor around it, allows you to soften into your gifts. And I just want to say that that is the masculine's responsibility, to allow you to feel that firm presence, which allows you to move into more of who you are.
Very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome chatting with you.
An amazing conversation. Thank you again, Jamie. If you could just stay on and we'll get the title for the show.
Perfect.
And for everyone, thanks for watching. If you can like, subscribe, share this with people who you think would appreciate the message. Our men are really stepping up now, heart, truth, and soul. So yeah, it's there's a lot of men out there who would love to hear what Jamie has to say today. So thank you, and I'll see you in another few days with another episode of Heart Warriors.